I had seen in the past complex deals, but I'd never seen anything like this.
And it involved two of Europe's leading financial institutions. On the one hand, the world's oldest bank and Italy's third largest lender, Monte Paschi. And on the other hand, Deutsche Bank, once the world's largest financial institution. The idea that these two had got together to cook the books was just astonishing.
I thought it was clever, but illegal. And a few of them should actually go to jail, in my view.
This was clearly a huge scandal that made $450 million disappear from Monte Paschi's books. If it wasn't for our reporting, the public may never have found out. My name is Elisa Martinuzzi. I'm a columnist with Bloomberg Opinion.
A presidential address to the nation.
This is an extraordinary period for America's economy. Over the past few weeks, many Americans have felt anxiety about their finances and their future.
So it's December 2008, and we're right in the depth of the financial crisis.
The Dow tumbled more than 500 points after two pillars of the street tumbled over the weekend.
Financial institutions are really fighting for survival, and these two in particular, Monte Paschi and Deutsche Bank.
We're seeing the stock falling by more than 7% as we speak right now.
On the one hand, you have Deutsche Bank with a massive balance sheet. It's 2.5 trillion euros. It's the size of a large economy. Trust that the bank is solid and sound is what it needs to retain every day to keep ticking along. So showing that it's able to do a deal like the one it was trying to do with Paschi is absolutely critical. And you have Monte dei Paschi, which just recently bought a big rival at the peak of the market in cash, or was already stretching its finances. Suddenly it was facing another $450 million potentially in a single loss on a single investment that it would have to book at 2008.
They couldn't admit the loss that they actually had faced, and so this deal was to cover that loss. The risk they were facing was nationalization by the Italian government or control by the Bank of Italy direct.
It was a prospect that the management was trying everything it possibly could to avert. They come up with this complex, multi-layered transaction, which, like magic, takes the loss that they would have to crystallize at the end of 2008 and spreads it out over many years in a fashion that they decide that doesn't have to be disclosed to investors.
And of course, it's structured in such a way that Deutsche Bank would, in the long run, make a great deal of money from this.
So something in the order of 60 million euros just on that trade.
The whole point of it was to violate the accounting requirements of Italy and fool the accounting structure, stop them having essentially to account for a loss, as simple as that.
It wasn't long after they struck the deal that Monte Paschi started hurting from the transaction.
Monte Paschi's just revealed it could run out of cash in just 4 months. It needs to offload a mountain of bad loans or risk being wound down.
Yet Paschi limped along, propped up by government bailout, after losses on bad loans also piled up. Astonishingly, it took more than 4 years for the chicanery to come to light, well after regulators from the US to Italy had been alerted to it. A tipster reached out and said, I have something for you that's going to be of great interest. And there started my reporting on Monte Paschi. Little by little, the source got comfortable in sharing more and more details about this transaction that, to be honest with you, looked really too good to be true. The material, when looked at it in its completeness, spoke quite clearly of what was going on. This transaction that had allowed the world's oldest bank to basically cook its books. So what I endeavored to do was to find experts in the field who would help stand up what these transactions were trying to do, help substantiate what the source was telling me. And one of these was Professor Michael Dempster from Cambridge.
I had seen in the past complex deals, but I'd never seen anything like this, where basically it was shifting cash back and forth in time.
So a simple version of how the deal worked goes something like this. You had two parts. One was sure to win for Monte dei Paschi, and one was sure to lose for Monte dei Paschi. The part that was sure to win would generate a gain for Monte dei Paschi, which it would use to cover up the existing loss. The part that was sure to lose for Monte dei Paschi, the Italian bank would keep, but it wouldn't crystallize that loss right at 2008. It would spread out the loss over many years.
What was striking was the fact that the client was being given a huge amount of money, €500 million, roughly speaking. We'd never seen a deal like this in which the client received a large amount of cash at the beginning and paid it back and then some afterward. When I saw it and when Elisa Martinuzzi saw it, I mean, it's obvious that it's an illegal accounting device.
Arriva al termine di un dibattimento durato quasi 3 anni la sentenza di primo grado nel filone milanese del processo sulle presunte irregolarità nelle operazioni effettuate.
Initially, it was the Siena prosecutors that started looking at these transactions, and it went to trial about 3 years ago, and the verdict came in November.
Il Tribunale di Milano, in nome del popolo italiano, visti gli articoli 530.
The Milan court convicted 13 individuals for helping Monte Paschi hide losses from its accounts. The individuals included Monte Paschi's former chairman, Giuseppe Mussari, and Deutsche Bank's former head of global rates, Michele Faisola.
We want to be able to serve, to customize solutions.
The judges also ordered the banks to pay fines and set aside amounts that total 160 million, and ordered further inquiries into some of the individuals who had testified. These are, by a number of measures, the most significant convictions relating to the financial crisis. You haven't had chairmen of institutions, let alone 13 senior managers across 3 institutions, go to face jail sentences for their wrongdoing.
But of course, this is convicted in an Italian court. They don't have to go to jail unless they have a second trial in which they essentially can put them in jail. So whilst they've been besmirched, so to speak, their reputations, it's not terribly huge punishment. My initial response to the verdicts was that they were not stiff enough, and they should have gone another layer up to, in fact, the head of the investment bank.
I'm not so sure that the public can really be confident that we're not going to see another Monte Paschi.
The situation is essentially the same today as it was before. A lot more complicated because the regulators have tried to make it better, but they've failed, basically.
Having spoken to regulators about the lessons from the financial crisis, it's pretty clear where the weaknesses still lie.
Generally, on all the reforms that have done since the financial crisis, we've made them better, but we probably haven't made them good enough. So there's really not been fundamental changes. We've kind of made these improvements around the edges. I think people should still be concerned. And I think there's this kind of assumption that it's yesterday's news, and I think that's probably ill-advised because I think there's still some real fragility in the system.
As a senior investment banking executive recently told me, his chief financial officer would not be able to challenge him on what's in his books. You need a PhD to understand a lot of these transactions, and the people in charge don't have those PhDs. There's not an awful lot to be confident about what's really lurking inside financial institutions' balance sheets. And it remains just as difficult for the outside world to get into them.
Yes, it's true. The higher management often doesn't understand much at all, actually, which of course is a serious problem when there is a crisis.
Not unlike what we saw in the lead up to the global financial crisis, where it was mortgage debt that had ballooned. This time, it's corporate debt.
The market has grown enormously, and I believe that there's a recession coming or a market crash coming, and It's a government matter, it's a political matter, and whether or not the politicians will be able to sort something out, I'm very pessimistic about that.